Now, I've seen the news. And I'm going to give the president the benefit of the doubt. He can't say these things to you, but I can. But I don't know, other than that, I don't know how he can sit there and say the worst is behind us. Maybe it's just because he doesn't think it'll get worse than 30,000 people out of a town of 40,000 going to a parking lot, standing in a line for a waiting list for 445 government-subsidized houses 2 years down the road. It doesn't get much worse than pure hopelessness. And people, I fear, are becoming more and more hopeless. Don't. Check yourself. I read in the Wall Street Journal the other day about a 52-year-old mechanic named Michael Hatchell. He said that he turned down more than a dozen offers while he was unemployed for 59 weeks. He chose to take the government handout. People are choosing to be dependent on the government over picking themselves up and taking less and resetting and starting all over again. Is that hopelessness? Is that dependency? Is that the lack of faith? Or is it the beginning of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may all die? Mortgage bailouts, teacher bailouts, financial bailouts, insurance bailouts, auto bailouts, extended unemployment for 99 weeks, more welfare, more food stamps. Where does it end? I mean, look, I understand people fall on hard times. We have these time periods. They always come. People fall on hard times. But the more we don't let people fail, or the people who have done things wrong, the more we don't let them face the consequence of their own action, the more we make them dependent, and the more risky behavior becomes. The more we rob a man of his spirit and his pride, the more trouble we're in. I want you to watch for three things. I want you to watch for hopelessness. Misplaced hope in government. Misplaced I want you to watch for a perversion of faith. We've talked about it on this program. It is social justice and collective salvation. And then I want you to watch for the possibility of deflation into hyperinflation, the selling and buying of our own bonds. That too was done in Weimar. That's why you have to understand these things. I know that you are busy. I know that the last thing you need is homework from me. But you must educate yourself. If we don't know history, we won't be able to predict the future. And I'm telling you, we are repeating many of the same mistakes. This generation of Americans, heck, the last generation of Americans, don't know what hyperinflation even means, like they did in Weimar. We can't understand it. What was that possibly like? Well, let me tell you something. Here's what happened. Germany was ordered to pay for reparations after World War I. They didn't have the money. They begged people, don't make us pay this. So they decided instead to print it all. Well, when they did that, hyperinflation eventually kicked in. The money inflated so fast that it was almost instantly worthless. People would literally get paid at work. They would pull a big, like, Brinks truck up to the office, and they would pay you in cash. People would go out and buy things and then return to work. 2, 3, 4 hours later, they would pay you again, and you would go out because the prices would rise. One German writer told the story of two women carrying laundry baskets filled with banknotes. A crowd gathered around the store window. They put down the baskets full of money to go look. When they came back, the banknotes, the money, still there, but the baskets were gone. Another German recounts that he stopped into a cafe for a cup of coffee. He sat down, noticed the price was 5,000 marks. He sat down, grabbed a paper, drank his coffee, sat there for about an hour reading the paper. When he went to pay the bill, the coffee was now 8,000 marks because the mark had lost that much value in an hour. These are bank notes. These are stamps from the Weimar Republic. They put them on the dollars, the marks, because the paper wasn't even worth anything after. They started doing this. Then they just started rubber stamping them. One more story on this. An American went over to Germany and he left a $1 tip at a restaurant. It was such a staggering amount to the German waiter that the waiter actually took that $1 home, called a family meeting together to figure out what is the best thing we can do to invest this $1. America, the economic laws do not stop at our shore. We are not immune from hyperinflation or deflation. It's coming. But in our arrogance, we must think that we're immune because we are mirroring the Weimar Republic by monetizing our debt and continuing to spend when we can't afford it. These three paintings over here, these three paintings I painted about a year ago. I painted them for a reason, and I didn't even know at the time, but they're making more and more sense to me every day. Faith. Faith, our faith, your faith must be restored. Without a strong sense of right and wrong that comes from God, we will spiral quickly. They're already legalizing drugs in California like they did in Weimar. Are you telling me that our society is getting better? 2, hope. Not false hope, the truth. And the truth is you can make it. Things will get better. You don't need 2 years down the road Section 8 housing. You can succeed. And 3, charity. Not from the government, but through ourselves, our neighbors, our churches, our synagogues. We need to pick each other up and be prepared to support one another. That's what Americans do best. We must have our hearts filled with faith, hope, and charity. When I talked on my radio program a few years ago, before the collapse even began, and I talked about the economy before the big crash, I was mocked by almost everybody in my listening audience and the press. I remember being openly laughed at for warning about a possible Great Depression. A couple of years goes by, and our president is using similar language, both Bush and Obama. You and I were both called racist and drama queens for calling Obama a Marxist socialist who wants to fundamentally transform our country. As Harry Reid would say, need I say more on that one? In January, I told you that the race card would be used right around the elections because that's all they had left. The reason why I bring these things up is I just want to remind you I have a decent track record. I'm not right all the time, but I have a decent track record. May I now ask you to disregard those who will likely mock the thing I'm telling you tonight, that America is repeating the mistakes of the Weimar Republic. I tell you this not because I expect it to change, but I expect you to do something to prepare yourself. I touched on the Weimar Cabaret last segment. It was the epitome of moral decline in Germany. It rotted their society, and the average citizen was seduced into despair, hopelessness, and ignorant bliss. I know I'm going to be criticized for this comparison, but it is the same story throughout all of history, and someone has to point it out. When man tries to rely on himself or the government as a beacon of hope, morality, we always fall short every single time. We cannot make it alone, and left to our own devices, there's trouble. Being good for the sake of just being good is a losing formula. History proves it throughout all time. If we as Americans can still think out of the box, and we want a different result than every previous civilization that we are following in their path, we must try something different, and we better try it soon. Right now, we are repeating the same mistakes. The mistake that distancing ourselves from God is okay. I was on with Bill O'Reilly last night. We had an interesting exchange, and I want you to see if you notice something. We have got to get back to our churches, our synagogues, our mosques, whatever it is, as long as it's not telling you to blow things up. Get back to God and get to the back to the founding principles. I don't know if
that's going to happen. I mean, it's a noble thing you're trying to do because spirituality is a good thing.
You can argue about abortion or gay marriage or whatever all you want.
Yeah.
The country is burning down. I personally
But isn't that
think
one of the reasons? Because we're getting away from the traditional way we used to live into this progressive
So let's go back to the instead of arguing about these divisive things, let's get back into our churches and our synagogues. And
you're not going to get people going back unless there's a reason to go back.
This is the reason, America. The events haven't happened yet, but they don't have to. The country is on fire. We must turn around. We must look to God again. If we try the same solutions that past civilizations have tried, guess what? We're going to have the same result, and it is failure. These problems are too big for us to handle. We're causing them by our own unwillingness to regulate ourselves. We must turn back to the values and the principles that made this nation great in the first place. Trust in the individual. Trust in the individual. Trust in personal responsibility, thrift, honesty. And whether or not you want to admit it or not, we must get back to God. We must get back to faith. We need to get back on our knees and pray. There's a phrase on our money, and I wonder if we've just said it so many times we don't even notice it anymore. In God we trust. It's there on the money. Is it still true to you? It is to me. And I know with everything in me, this is the way out. Now is the time. Everything has to start with you, the individual. That's what this life is all about, individual choices. Get the demons out of your life. Get the lies, get all of this crap out of our lives. The only way this ship is going to turn around is if you turn around. This is what 828 is all about. Restoring honor. I'm going to show you some people that are full of honor, that will inspire you. Inspire your children. America began with men and women of honor who risked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. They risked it all. And look what they created. I know you. You are not going to sit by or be a part of people that are just throwing it all away, because it's not about you. It's not even about our children. I don't know what God has in store for man's freedom. But I have to tell you something. Eternal ramifications if we're the generation that loses it. We've made mistakes. I've made tons of mistakes. Move on. Turn back around. Start living your life the right way. I was going to say, I hope that you will show up on 828 at the feet of Abraham Lincoln. But I know you again. And I know you can feel it in your bones. Something is happening. And it's good. So I have faith that you will be there in Washington, D.C., August 28th, 2 weeks from Saturday. See you then.
Names are Buffy and Jody Davis.
Buffy? That's a very odd name,
this?
Mr. Davis.
My name is Mr. French.
Mr. French. I love Mr. French. It's a show when I was a kid called Family Affair. And it comes from a time, I mean, look, it comes from the 60s. Things were screwed up. Things were bad in the 60s. But at least it seemed there was, I mean, here's one show, and there were a lot like this, where they were striving to show that there is something better. There was at least some illusion that life was okay someplace. If people are still asking themselves, what happened? How did we possibly get here? It's simple. I told you back in April, progressives are trying to do 3 things. They wanted to transform America, so they had to do 3 things. And tell me if they've accomplished them. 1, undermine faith in religion. Then undermine the Constitution. And the last one was, we had such an attachment to our founding fathers because we knew who these people were. Okay, so they were undermine religion, undermine the Constitution, and undermine the founding fathers. Even erase them from our textbooks. So, how's that plan progressing? Any evidence that it is? The war on religion has been going on for a while. This is actually, I haven't read this yet. This is from Josiah Strong, Reverend Josiah Strong, 1888. This is some of the beginnings of the social justice movement. And the attack on religion has been unrelenting, and it is only getting much, much worse. Now, I want to play something for you, and it's not because it's attacking me, but the way they are purposely perverting the gospel. Listen to this.
Would you support a leader who said Jesus' teachings can lead to Nazism? Or who attacks Christian pastors for preaching the full gospel? Then why do so many Christians tune in to Glenn Beck? By deriding pastors who preach the justice taught by Jesus and the prophets, Glenn Beck has urged listeners to follow his piecemeal gospel